Welcome to this event that is taking place now from 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock. If we are lucky to do the whole presentation. I wish you welcome. My name is Joseph Martinsen. I'm a pensioner. I will first thank this Media Center Belgrade for hosting us for this event. They have done a good job for me so that I could come here and feel free to set up my presentation. With my side here, I have Igor. He is a consecutive translator if I need urgent help. And we have Tatiana, who is this simultaneously translation. We are recording this event for my webpage, so you know that. Yes. Could we close the door out there? As I mentioned, I'm Joseph, and I'm a pensioner. And back in 1999, I worked for United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. And that's called UNHCR, and I used this abbreviation later on. And then I worked for Norwegian Church Aid, and I will refer to them as NCA later on. In Kosovo, from July 99, 19th of July 99 to March 2000. The topic we are going through is covering my findings concerning approximately 400 mass graves that was discovered in Kosovo in 99 and reported to UN Security Council and Kofi Annan, who was Secretary General at that time. The person who sent the report was the chief prosecutor for another abbreviation, International Crime Tribunal for Yugoslavia, former Yugoslavia, ITCY. She was sending this report to the Security Council, and they found thousands of bodies in all those graves, and they registered them, but they didn't do anything more concerning the mass graves. They didn't tell where they found them and so on. Just counted the number of dead people and trying to find their names and so on. But I will go deeper into this later in this presentation. It will take about 45 minutes. Then we will have a tea, coffee, short break. And then we will show a film called The Process After a War. It was made by Evald Ottestad from Norway. It's about 69 minutes. And after that, we will have a new coffee if needed, and then answers and questions. The people present here now, if they stay to the end of this event, they will have a present from me. It consists of my 2 books and this video and a T-shirt. The T-shirt represents a start for hopefully a new NGO called Truth Commission's Serbia-Kosovo. I don't know if we are able to do the job, but we will try at least. And then we will see what's happened. Well, why am I doing this presentation? Well, back in, as I said, July 1999, I was working for UNHCR and NCA. I was hired as a coordinator for a program called Removal of Dead Bodies from Wells. I didn't know much about Kosovo when I first came down here to Kosovo in July 1999. For us Norwegian, we regarded this area down there as Yugoslavia. I remember back in the 1960s and 70s, we regarded Yugoslavia as a very good place. It was a solid country. And we had also a relation, especially to many Serbs during the war in Norway back in 1945. They were prisoners of war and worked on a way in the northern part of Norway. So we knew about people from Yugoslavia, but not personally. We knew by history. And that is what I can tell you. I remember I'm a former major in the army. And I remember we looked up at Yugoslavia in a way because they had a very good professional army at that time. And they were producing a lot of weapons, and they were exporting weapons, and they were producing explosive and exporting explosive. So we knew a little bit about the military side of Yugoslavia. And as such, we regarded them as very good. So, back in 1997, a friend of mine came to me and said, I need a flat for a friend. He was a Serbian doctor. He was applying for a job in Norway, and he needed to go through a language course. And I said, of course, he can rent my flat as long as he needs for this course. And that was my first and at that time only connection privately with the Serb. Later on, I happened then to, in July 1999, end up in Kosovo. And I get to know Kosovo very well. I will show you. I didn't want it to stay there after my job, but it happens to be like that. After I did the job down there, it took 8 months. We traveled all over Kosovo and picked up dead bodies. Many places there were many dead bodies in wells. In one place we found 22 dead bodies in 2 wells. So it was a terrible job, but when you take on a job, you have to fulfill it and do it through. So, as strange as it can hear, you get used to dead bodies in a way when you have to deal with them. So, and that is a little bit scaring in a way, thinking of what's happened around the world now today. But you can, in a way, be used to dead bodies, mutilated dead bodies. But in Kosovo in '99, that was my first time meeting dead bodies, mutilated. I came back. I finished my job in 2000 March and went to Spain because I was retired and wanted to stay there. There is a very good climate and nice for a man from Norway who is used to long winters and ice and cold. There I met an old German. I told him about what I had done, and he said, "You need to write a book about it, because otherwise it will be forgotten. Because you can't trust the archives to UN and the other organization, because they just archive the information they get, and that's it." So after thinking about it, I went back. I had never written a book before, but okay, I said, I will try. So it took me 3 years to go through the whole job we did, visiting all the places, had background information, and then I presented a book in 2005 in Norway called Dødsbrønnene i Kosovo. In English, the Kosovo, the Wells of Death. And I also registered back then. That was 5-6 years after last time I had a connection with UN down there. And I discovered that they had sort of put the lid on all this information about crimes committed, regular wars crime committed in Kosovo. And it amounted up to nearly 11,000 people, civilians. There were children, women, men, old, young. And I said to myself, why are not these cases brought up into light? They have the information, but they didn't do much about it. They had this case going on in Hague against Milosevic and his people, but they were concentrating solely on those who sort of facilitated the event, the things, and sort of gave a political clearance for this. I was asked to write a new book about Kosovo, and then it popped up in my mind, why not look into those 400 mass graves and see if there is something there that should be lifted up and presented publicly. Because after my traveling around in Kosovo, I registered that people was very dissatisfied with the situation. No one had recognized their losses. There were families that were totally destroyed. Some places only one person left in a family of 20 persons. And that was children, there were women and everything. And I agreed, why is not this cases lifted up? So that was my sort of going into this case. And it took me 14 years to do all this. To do the research for the book, the second book, because it was quite extensive. You had to do a real good job concerning the research, because you couldn't put up name there that was not relevant for the case. And also we were lucky enough to have one man who was doing the film for us. He followed my research for the book over 2 years, and then ended up with the film you will see later on today. In Kosovo, they had put up an sort of administration, because it had become a UN protectorate, this Kosovo. It was not a state, it was a former province of Serbia. So it was a protectorate, and they put in ahead of this protectorate a so-called representative for the Secretary General. They called him SRSG. And this person had total power in Kosovo. I had total executive power. And they didn't do much. This first, we call it governors. This first governor, he was one of the founders of Medicine Sans Frontières, Doctors Without Borders. And in fact, we ended up with him, staying there for 1.5 years. And the thing he concentrated his activities on was putting up, there was a mobile license. Mobile phones were not existing in Kosovo at that time, and they set up a license there for mobile. And this Bernard Kouchner, he gave this mobile license to Monaco. Instead of putting it out as a bid for competition from different parts of the businesses, he gave it to Monaco. And the next major step he did was to create a law in Kosovo that said no one could sue an international working in Kosovo. And no one could sue a local working for an international in Kosovo. And that resulted in, over 10 years' time, that 60,000 people were without reach of the law in Kosovo. And the corruption exploded. I've been there all those years. I saw it. So it was a catastrophe how UN managed to administer UN protectorate. They could build up a state from scratch, but they failed totally. And in addition, the local government also failed because they had no experience. And they fell back on old patterns because they were not used to run a state. They run families. And when they come in power, they continue to run families. And that was not particularly good for Kosovo. So it was a tragedy, to my opinion. This is my opinion. my 10, 15 years ended up with this that is present there. It's my webpage. I have put my 2 books and film to download for free there in order to try to inform. It's in 3 languages, Albanian, Serbian, and English, and try to inform the newer generation, the younger generation, both in Kosovo and Serbia, because they have been deprived for this information, both in Kosovo and in Serbia. They don't talk about this for some reason. And I think it's political and put on them from the UN. They won't admit it, but I don't see any other reasons. Another problem I encountered when I came there was that the former administration, Serb administration, and the military, when they left Kosovo, they took everything concerning archives. You name it, from municipalities and state or province, or you name it. There was not a single sheet left. So they had big problems there. They didn't know who were in Kosovo. They didn't know who was in the mass graves, so to speak, and who was missing, and so on. So there was a big problem in the beginning to find out who are killed and who was missing, and also who are coming back. For half of the population, the Albanians, were outside Kosovo at that time. They were forced out by the Serb military and police. This picture represents registered mass graves in 20 of June 1999. And there were added quite a lot in addition to these mass graves. After 2000, they found mass graves in Serbia, inside Serbia, on different places. And they were Albanians that were found there. They were, it's a strange case. They were transported by trucks from mass graves in Kosovo into Serbia in order to put them in new mass graves in Serbia. And there were between 1,000, 2,000 people. The reason why they found out this was that one of the trucks, when it came to Batanica, it drove out in the river. And suddenly corpses started to float up. And there was big problems. And they started an investigation. And Natasha Kandic did a good job here to recording and to present the case of the mass graves in Serbia concerning missing Albanians. When I started up, my biggest problem was, where do I find reliable information? And the only place, because I was alone, I was a lonely wolf, so to speak. And how do I start up this? I had taken on, I said, okay, I can try and do another book. So I had to go to the international organizations. And have copies of their registrations of people who were found killed, who were missing, or those who came back from abroad. These 6 that I have mentioned here, they were my main sources. I have not invented a single name here. That is international documents that I received copy of because I said I was doing this book. And all of those organizations are respected and well known all over the world, I will think. And as I said, they supported me with those lists. And I have all the background documentation from this. But I thought also, I can't just rely on them. I had to sort of have a supplementary documentation in order to have a quality control of the things that was listed in those international documents. These who are listed here, they are my additional sources, and all the things I found from them, what they had written and produced of paper concerning Kosovo, 1998 to 99, fitted very well in with the first information I got from my main sources. It sort of fit in together. So, and I will add some commentate to those last one that I have written here. The first 7 points are connected to killings of civilians and statements related to the general situation during the 1998-99 war period. That is the 7th first one. The 8th point is a book written by a Serbian woman who lived in Kosovo, Polja, for 5 years and worked as a taxi driver from 1994 to 1999. Her description of what took place in the period confirms the general suppression and atrocity against Kosovo Albanians. Due to persecutions and death threats after publishing this book in Serbia, she got asylum in Norway. So she is now living in Norway, this lady. The 9th point refers to a Norwegian journalist who followed the proceedings against Milosevic for 3 years. He sat there more or less every day, and he made his notes, and then he wrote a book called Milosevic in Peace and War. And his documentation from the proceedings, from the witnesses that was presented during the case, also confirmed the first findings. So in a way, I have, if not double, but triple checked the things. There will, of course, be discrepancies here. Of course, and that I have written in my book. There will be faults, of course. You will never have documentation that is fully cover any sort of case. So there will always be things, but the main trend, the main things that happen, that is the same and the true. And then we can discuss if it's 1,000 or 10,000 or whatever. Not that big discrepancies, but there can be numbers here, because the first people in Kosovo who started to write those names then were in Albanian. They were international people, and they wrote terrible names many times. So they had to be checked up and controlled over again and over again. And I did my best doing this. But still there can be discrepancies here, of course. But the main message, the main thing is very clear. And this is one contribution to this story. I can tell you that after the Second World War in Norway, it took 60 years before they had fully covered what took place during those 5 years with war in Norway. Who were killed, why, where, and when. 60 years. So, of course, there will be this. There will be Natasha Kandis. There will be Helsinki Committee coming in with information later on, of course. But together, this will make a picture that is correct. And I tend to believe that my presentation is very close to a real picture. It's very close. I've used more than 10 years, that's 2 master degrees, doing this job. So I've done my best. I've done my best. I think that my webpage could be used in educational system. It's a very compact and comprehensive presentation, and it's done by international, and it's controlled by documents from international. So it should be relatively correct, all the things that I have on my webpage. And in addition, I have pointed out new things to look into, and that is truth. What did I write there?
Where?
Truth. What's on the T-shirt? Truth Commission.
Truth Commission, Kosovo, Serbia.
Because they should have started 10 years ago with the Truth Commission. Kofi Annan, he said, the international, in 99, the job for the international here is to restore buildings, roads, and heal the wounds. But no one was looking into this heal the wounds. But they had to start now. If the young people in Kosovo, young people in Serbia, ever should be friends or come together and talk, they need to know their contemporary history. Today they don't know it. They are frustrated. They want to seek asylum wherever. They are coming to Scandinavia, Norway, all over, because they don't feel the political system are talking their cases. They are always covering up lost fights, personal gains. I never seen any of the political systems during those 15 years I dealt with this concentrating on healing the wounds. There were tens of thousands raped in Kosovo. No one is talking about them. Even in Kosovo, they are non-existent. They hardly have money to live. They have damaged psychologically and everything. And still they suffer. And they have children. And the government in Kosovo hardly pay them anything. They should have a solid pension. They did their job. They looked after the children. They cooked the meat. When the enemy come, the men, they run into the forest and hide. And those left, the women, they were really having a bad time. So it's so important that the government in both countries realize that you have to look into this. You can't just bury it, put it under the carpet. They did that since 1910. Have they buried all the differences in opinion? There are 6 different histories for former Yugoslavia, and no one of them didn't match particularly good. So they have to do something with this problem. They have to really look into reconciliation and forgiveness. I had put up here because I'm doing lecture from time to time. So I get involved, and I am written here smile. So now I'm smiling because it's a tough task. And here I wrote, calm down, because you get excited. That was my presentation and how I managed to find documentation for my work. We will have coffee, and then we will show the film. And after the film, we will have coffee again, and then we can have